Hello, and welcome to this exploration of one of the most devastating economic downturns in modern history, the Great Depression. I'm going to take you on a journey through this tumultuous period, examining its causes, effects, and lasting impact on the world. The Great Depression was a severe worldwide economic depression that began in 1929 and lasted until the late 1930s. It was the longest, deepest, and most widespread depression of the 20th century, and its effects were felt across the globe. To put this into perspective, the impact of the Great Depression was far more severe than anything we've experienced in recent memory. Even the financial crisis of 2008, which many of us lived through, pales in comparison. The sheer scale of economic contraction during the Great Depression is hard to fathom. Entire industries collapsed, international trade plummeted, and millions found themselves out of work. It's crucial to understand that this wasn't just an American phenomenon. It was truly global in nature, affecting countries from Europe to Asia and everywhere in between. The origins of the Great Depression are complex and multifaceted, but most historians agree that the catalyst was the devastating Wall Street crash of 1929. However, it's important to note that the crash was more a symptom of underlying economic issues than the sole cause. In the years leading up to the crash, there had been a gradual decline in consumer goods sales, falling exports, and growing income inequality. These factors had already set the stage for economic downturn, but the stock market crash accelerated and exacerbated the process. I think the Austrian business cycle theory has done the world a great deal of harm. If you go back to the 1930s, which is a key point, here you had the Austrians sitting in London, Hayek and Lionel Robbins, and saying you just have to let the bottom drop out of the world. You've just got to let it cure itself. You can't do anything about it. You will only make it worse. The stock market crash of 1929 was a pivotal moment in the onset of the Great Depression. On what became known as Black Tuesday, the 29th of October, 1929, the market saw another 11% drop. This came on the heels of significant losses in the preceding days, creating a panic that reverberated far beyond the trading floor. Thousands of investors were ruined and billions of dollars had been lost. Many stocks couldn't be sold at any price. The psychological impact of this crash cannot be overstated. It shattered confidence in the economy and set off a chain reaction that would be felt for years to come. However, it's crucial to understand that the stock market crash didn't immediately plunge the world into depression. In fact, the worst of the crisis didn't reverberate around the world until after 1929. The situation reached panic levels again in December 1930, with a bank run on the Bank of United States. This privately run institution, despite its name, had no relation to the government. Unable to pay out to all of its creditors, the bank failed. This failure was significant, accounting for a third of the total $550 million in deposits lost that year. With its closure, bank failures reached a critical mass, further eroding public confidence in the financial system. The ripple effects of these financial collapses were felt far beyond Wall Street. As banks failed and credit dried up, businesses struggled to stay afloat. Many were forced to lay off workers or shut down entirely. This led to a sharp rise in unemployment, which in turn led to decreased consumer spending. It was a vicious cycle that fed upon itself, each element exacerbating the others. By 1933, nearly 15 million Americans were out of work. That's about 25% of the total workforce. To put that in perspective, during the worst of the 2008 financial crisis, unemployment in the United States peaked at about 10%. The scale of joblessness during the Great Depression was truly unprecedented in modern times. Let me end my talk by abusing slightly my status as an official representative of the Federal Reserve. I would like to say to Milton and Anna, regarding the Great Depression, you're right. We did it. We're very sorry, but thanks to you, we won't do it again. Do. While the Great Depression began in the United States, its effects were felt around the world. The interconnected nature of the global economy meant that economic turmoil in one major nation would inevitably impact others. International trade plummeted as countries erected trade barriers in a misguided attempt to protect their domestic industries. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, passed by the United States Congress in 1930, is often cited as a major contributor to the global spread of the Depression. This act raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods, prompting retaliatory measures from America's trading partners. As a result, world trade declined by a staggering 65% between 1929 and 1933. The impact on Europe was particularly severe. Many European economies were still recovering from the devastation of the First World War and were heavily indebted to the United States. As the American economy collapsed, these debts became increasingly difficult to service. Germany, already struggling under the weight of war reparations, was hit especially hard. By 1932, German industrial production had fallen to about 58% of its 1928 level. This economic turmoil created political instability that would have far-reaching consequences, including the rise of extremist political movements. In the United Kingdom, the Depression led to a financial crisis in 1931. Investors around the world began withdrawing their gold from London at an alarming rate, forcing Britain off the gold standard. This decision, while necessary, had significant repercussions for the global financial system. Other countries soon followed suit, abandoning the gold standard in an attempt to shore up their economies. The collapse of the international gold standard marked a fundamental shift in the global economic order, one whose effects we're still grappling with today. Countries that remained on the gold standard, keeping currencies fixed, were more likely to restrict foreign trade. These countries resorted to protectionist policies to strengthen the balance of payments and limit gold losses. They hoped that these restrictions and depletions would hold the economic decline. As the Depression deepened, governments around the world struggled to respond effectively. In the United States, President Herbert Hoover's initial response was largely hands-off, believing that the economy would correct itself. This approach proved woefully inadequate as the crisis deepened. It wasn't until the election of Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1932 that a more interventionist approach was adopted. Roosevelt's New Deal marked a significant shift in American economic policy, introducing a raft of government programs aimed at providing relief, recovery, and reform. The New Deal included programs like the Works Progress Administration, which provided jobs for millions of unemployed Americans, and the Social Security Act, which established a system of old-age pensions and unemployment insurance. These programs not only provided immediate relief, but also helped to stabilize the economy by putting money back into circulation. However, it's important to note that the effectiveness of the New Deal in ending the Great Depression is still debated by economists and historians. Some argue that it was World War II, rather than the New Deal, that ultimately brought about full economic recovery. In Europe, responses to the Depression varied. In the United Kingdom, the national government formed in 1931 implemented austerity measures, cutting public spending and raising taxes. This approach, while politically controversial, helped to stabilise the British economy relatively quickly. Germany, on the other hand, saw the rise of the Nazi Party, which promised economic revival through rearmament and public works programs. While these policies did reduce unemployment, they also set Germany on a path to war. In many countries, the Depression led to a shift towards more interventionist economic policies, a trend that would continue well into the post-war period. It cannot be emphasized too strongly that the productivity, output and employment trends we are describing are long-time trends and were thoroughly evident before 1929. These trends are in no wise the result of the present Depression, nor are they the result of the World War. On the contrary, the present Depression is a collapse resulting from these long-term trends. The Great Depression left an indelible mark on the world, reshaping economic theory, government policy, and social attitudes. One of the most significant outcomes was a fundamental shift in thinking about the role of government in the economy. The laissez-faire approach that had dominated economic policy in the 1920s was largely discredited. Instead, there was a growing acceptance of the idea that governments had a responsibility to manage the economy and provide a social safety net for their citizens. This shift laid the groundwork for the welfare states that emerged in many Western countries after World War II. In the realm of economic theory, the Great Depression sparked a revolution. John Maynard Keynes's General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, published in 1936, provided a new framework for understanding economic downturns and how to combat them. Keynes argued that in times of economic crisis, governments should increase spending to stimulate demand, even if it meant running budget deficits. This Keynesian approach would dominate economic policymaking for decades after the war. However, it's worth noting that Keynes himself didn't believe the New Deal alone ended the Great Depression. He's quoted as saying, "It is, it seems, politically impossible for a capitalistic democracy to organise expenditure on the scale necessary to make the grand experiments which would prove my case, except in war conditions." I think by encouraging that kind of do-nothing policy both in Britain and in the United States, they did harm. The Great Depression also had profound social and cultural impacts. It shaped an entire generation's attitudes towards money, work, and government. Many who lived through the Depression developed a lifelong habit of frugality and a deep-seated fear of economic insecurity. This mindset would influence consumer behaviour and political attitudes for decades to come. The Depression also accelerated social changes that were already underway. Women, for instance, entered the workforce in greater numbers out of economic necessity, a trend that would continue during World War II and beyond. The hardships of the Depression also fostered a sense of collective struggle and solidarity in many communities, influencing everything from popular culture to political movements. As we reflect on the Great Depression, it's crucial to consider its relevance to our modern world. While we've made significant strides in economic management and have more tools at our disposal to combat economic downturns, the spectre of severe economic crisis still looms. The financial crisis of 2008 and the economic disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic serve as stark reminders that our economic systems remain vulnerable to shocks. The lessons of the Great Depression, the importance of maintaining economic stability, the need for robust social safety nets, and the dangers of extreme inequality remain as pertinent today as they were nearly a century ago. Moreover, the Great Depression serves as a powerful reminder of human resilience in the face of adversity. Despite the immense hardships, people found ways to survive and even thrive. Communities came together, mutual aid societies flourished, and new forms of cultural expression emerged. The Depression era saw the production of some of the most enduring works of American literature and art, from John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath to Dorothea Lange's iconic photographs. These works continue to resonate with us today, speaking to universal themes of struggle, perseverance, and hope in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. And the great owners who must lose their land in an upheaval, the great owners with access to history, with eyes to read history and to know the great fact: when property accumulates in too few hands, it is taken away. And that companion fact: when a majority of the people are hungry and cold, they will take by force what they need. And the little screaming fact that sounds through all history: repression works only to strengthen and knit the repressed. In conclusion, the Great Depression stands as a watershed moment in modern history, a crucible that reshaped our world in profound and lasting ways. Its legacy can be seen in our economic institutions, our political systems, and our cultural attitudes. As we face the economic challenges of the 21st century, from rising inequality to the disruptions of automation and climate change, the lessons of the Great Depression remain more relevant than ever. By studying this pivotal period, we can gain insights that may help us navigate the economic uncertainties of our own time, always mindful of the human cost of economic failure and the resilience of the human spirit in overcoming adversity. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the Great Depression. I hope this video has provided you with a deeper understanding of this crucial period in history and its ongoing relevance. If you found this content valuable, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Your support makes it possible for me to continue producing in-depth historical content. And do let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd be interested in seeing covered in future videos. Until next time, take care and keep exploring the fascinating world of history.